She has the lowest popularity or the highest unpopular rating of any governor in Virginia in modern history. And she quite possibly is the most unpopular governor in America right now because...
So I want to talk about the extremely important Virginia redistricting referendum that's taking place on Tuesday. And if you live in Virginia, make sure you get out to vote and vote no on this, because it is no secret that Abigail Spanberger and the Democrats have gone on a complete libtard blitzkrieg ever since they entered office in Virginia. Of course, she campaigned on being a moderate who sounded like she wasn't really going to do anything. And then the moment she gets into power, the Democrats begin passing some 1,300 bills in the span of a couple of months. Many of them include things like gun control, building more Section 8 housing, criminal justice reform, which in reality just means letting violent criminals out of jail. It's been largely a complete betrayal of what she actually campaigned on. But after all, why should you be surprised? You voted for a libtard and didn't think to get libtard things. Frankly, you deserve exactly what you're going to get. But as a result, we've simultaneously seen that Democrats actually don't know how to govern. And when they're in charge, people are reminded of just how terrible they were to begin with, because not only is her popularity collapsing, but now in this very vital upcoming referendum, it appears that the Democrat support may have not nearly been what it was just a few months ago. As we speak, currently Republican turnout is way outpacing what it was back in 2025, and Democrat turnout simultaneously has been relatively muted. It's catching up in recent days, especially as Democrats continue to pour money into this election, and for some strange reason, Republicans aren't doing the same, despite both polling and especially early voting turnout data showing this thing could be competitive. It certainly will be a lot closer than it was back in November. But nonetheless, if the national GOP is not going to pick up and realize the importance of this election, especially for their own midterm prospects, then we will do that in today's video, guys. So let's tell you about this. If you don't know what's happening, we'll explain it as well. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, although Abigail Spanberger is probably doing, to a certain extent, maybe things that she did campaign on, but not publicly, which is to say it was a little footnote on the campaign website and voters just didn't read it. And they thought, oh, well, she just wants to stop ICE from coming in our state and she's going to work with Republicans and she's a moderate. Jay Jones is a reformed man, even though he wants to murder Republicans and their children. But I will point out specifically, one thing Abigail Spanberger did not say she was going to do during her campaign was redistricting for national congressional elections in the state of Virginia. She actually came out and said she has no plans to do that. And then notice how a couple of months, I mean, literally, it's been about 2 to 3 months since she was in office, immediately she's trying to do what? Redistrict Virginia. So effectively, as you know, what Democrats, I don't know if you've noticed this strategy by now, their whole thing in 2026 is going to be running on these moderate, sensible campaigns, make the Republicans look like the radical ones. And then once they get into office, they're immediately going to start governing as radicals. And this current redistricting referendum that she's put on the ballot, despite severe legal questions of whether it's even allowed, but who knows if the state Supreme Court will actually step in on this, is indeed happening.
I mean, this whole thing seems like a bait and switch. I mean, Abigail Spanberger said she would not redistrict. In 2020, Virginia amended its constitution to give the districting to a bipartisan commission. And now, all of a sudden, a state that's completely purple, they're trying, and I feel like they're trying to pull the wool over voters' eyes. The language that's being proposed to them is about restoring fairness. And in fact, Republicans are suing over that use of language. It feels very misleading.
Why do you think
voters.
Why do you think the Democrats are doing this? Is it just we just decided to do it today, or why?
Well, in California, if you're concerned about balance, I don't want to go on to tit for tat, but if you're concerned about balancing, the state of California has basically balanced out whatever Texas did. And so now this feels like on the offensive, where Virginia is basically trying to get rid of all of the Republican seats.
Well, yes, it is a pretty explicit and naked Democrat power grab. This is something she said she was not going to do. Now she's doing it. And it doesn't stop there, because Democrats likewise are effectively rigging this referendum by using misleading language on the ballot. It basically says something about restoring fairness, despite the fact that's not what it's doing at all. It's total partisan redistricting. And you can see the consequences of that, by the way. Check this out. According to a new George Mason and Washington Post poll on the Virginia redistricting referendum, likely voters were asked if they will vote yes or no on the ridiculous, misleading ballot language. The response there was 52% for yes and 47% for no. But 57% of voters in the same poll said it's more important that congressional districts reflect the political makeup of a state rather than benefit one political party. And now you know why Democrats wrote, quote, restore fairness on a ballot that would create a 10 Democrat to 1 Republican congressional map in a state that is basically on average about D plus 5 to 10. Utterly ridiculous. But at the same time, folks, we should not be all that surprised, because guess what? To an extent, you almost have to respect the fact that when Democrats take political office, they use the power that they're given. They're not like the Indiana Republicans who are going to sit there and say, sure, we may have a Republican supermajority in the state, but we're not going to redistrict because of principles or something like that. Notice how Democrats are taking a dump on your principles. Notice how the fact that Indiana Republicans said, oh, well, we made the secret deal with Democrats that everyone's going to stand down in the redistricting wars. Notice how Democrats literally just didn't follow that, right? It's like making a deal with the Iranians at this point. But again, why should we be surprised, folks? Right? That's all I'm going to say about this. Now, we tried to bring lawsuits about this. It sounds so far like it has not really worked all that well. And Democrats are going through saying restore. Here's the language, by the way. So here's what it says. The official ballot question says, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections? That's literally what it says, while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census. It sounds so nice, right? But in reality, we know the dirty tricks these people play. Of course, there is one significant problem that Democrats would be facing, and that is the possibility that they may have pushed too hard, too fast, which is to say, let's not forget, if you get elected on a relatively moderate rhetorical platform and you immediately begin governing like a radical, there's going to be a galvanization specifically of Republicans, right? Republican-leaning voters who maybe sat out or were kind of apathetic about the last election all of a sudden are pissed. You have the rather unintelligent but maybe well-meaning independent voters who are thinking, oh, well, I didn't vote for this either. I'm going to have a backlash in response. And as you can see, what's currently now happening as a result of the fact, again, Democrats governed like crazy radicals the moment they got into office, is now throughout this redistricting vote, early vote turnout has surged. It's been incredibly high, actually even higher in many cases than the last 2025 governor election for Republicans, whereas Democrats are rather struggling to get their own voters to come out and, try to help rig the midterms or something. As you can see, Quantus Insights is currently breaking down the early vote data we've seen out of the red districts, and you can see this, right? So all of the red parts, or most, I should say, of the red parts of Virginia are outperforming in terms of early turnout. Democrats thus far have lagged behind. What they're stating is that a loose projection of the Virginia redistricting referendum early vote based on the data and modeled from district behavior in 2025, 2024, 22, and 21, right? So using the data from past elections to try to make a projection here. Now, this is not Quantus polling or not a final result. Keep in mind that I'm not using this as a prediction, but it is to say there's a competitive nature to this, right? At the moment, the model they ran would show 50.3% no, 48.2% yes, which means by a very narrow margin within the margin of error, sure, based on early vote data, it is at least possible, and we have to see how turnout shapes out, right? It's possible that actually Republicans may succeed in rejecting this referendum, which is, of course, huge. Simultaneously, this guy points out that, you notice in Fairfax, Virginia, the turnout, which is a Democrat area, obviously, turnout is actually lower currently right now, about 30,000 or so less votes at this point than we had back in the 2025 election where Democrats won. Same thing with Nova. So, this is sort of happening. Now, again, hold your horses on getting too excited and especially not complacent, because let's not forget, Democrats in the last cycle won the election by about, 10 points or something? They just completely dominated. So we're going to have to catch up a lot of ground here. And what we have likewise seen in recent days is now Democrat turnout is beginning to catch up and the Republican advantage is beginning to dissipate. But that's exactly part of the reason why I'm making this video. This is a referendum we should take seriously. By the way, the GOP should take seriously for two key reasons. First and foremost, if Virginia redistricts, that puts the National Party at a complete disadvantage even more going into the midterm. So I'm not exactly, frankly, why the RNC isn't caring more about this race. They've effectively abandoned it. It's a disgrace because Democrats clearly care a lot. And by the way, based on the data, you can see we actually do have a chance in this case of winning it. But, for whatever reason, that's not happening, which will likewise mean, okay, if Democrats have more House seats in 2026, it's harder to win the House. By the way, one could also argue that despite Democrats having watched 2025 and thought, the midterms are going to be a bloodbath, nothing is set in stone. I'd remind people that Republicans thought the same thing about their midterms back in 2021 when we likewise won Virginia and almost won New Jersey. And that 2022 was a lot closer than people were expecting. So, whether it's to build the momentum or to build the tangible map to win the House, this is something I'm going to repeat we should absolutely care about. And if you're in Virginia, make sure you turn out and vote no, because this is not an election you should just give up on, right? It is in striking distance, far from guaranteed, but it's going to be a lot closer, and certainly send the Democrats a message, if anything else, right? If you get into office and claim to be moderates, but you start governing like crazy radical libtards, you're going to face political consequences for it, because, that's obviously important that if this referendum succeeds by a lot, Democrats are going to think they have a mandate. Oh, people want us to govern like crazy radical libtards. That's obviously not the case. Likewise, today, you can see the updates here. So some gains in red districts, some gains in blue districts, but now the red district's cumulative turnout advantage, as of I believe yesterday, is now 46,000, but this number keeps on decreasing from the day, because guess what? Democrats, now that they're pouring money into the race, now that they're putting the ads out there, the Democrat turnout's starting to wake up. So we can't be complacent. Republican turnout, you need to be there, right? You need to be there even if the national GOP apparently is not doing so. And clearly you can tell that Democrats have some consternation or concern that, hey, this is a little bit closer than we thought, because we now have Spanberger and all the national Democrats basically trying, even Gavin Newsom and others are getting involved, trying to rally the support and the turnout here. Check it out.
Hello, I'm Governor Abigail Spanberger, and I'm voting yes on Virginia's redistricting amendment. Here's why. I supported the formation of Virginia's bipartisan Redistricting Commission in 2020, and that support has not changed. What has changed is what we're seeing in states across the country, and a president who says that he's, quote, entitled to more Republican seats before this year's midterms. That's a direct quote, entitled. And Virginia has the opportunity to take action in response. And our approach is different. First, it's temporary. Second, it's directly in response to what other states decide to do. Third, and most importantly for me, it preserves Virginia's fair redistricting process into the future.
Yeah, all of those things are complete lies. And keep in mind, this is the same Virginia Democrat Party, if you missed the headline this week, joined the National Pact of States to abolish the Electoral College and basically send their electors to just vote based on the popular vote, which would effectively disenfranchise their own state and their own voters through the Electoral College system. But I'm sure, right, you're doing all that. You want to abolish the Electoral College, your state out of formal levels now endorsing that. But Democrats totally care about keeping in place fair representation or the electoral norms, right? As she's still trying to argue to this day, she's not really doing anything that aggressive. She's not changing much. Well, That may be on paper effective political messaging. The problem is, of course, you're not doing that. But again, we have to give Democrats credit. I respect the way they seize power when they see an opportunity. My only question here is why to many Republicans, the logic is not similar. Why so many red states stood down in their redistricting wars, whereas the Democrats right now are saying, again, total libtard blitzkrieg, we're in power, we should use the power that we are given. Now, that said, it is at the same time worth noting that the libtard blitzkrieg, the power grab, has not been all that popular. A big reason why, for example, you might see Democrats underperform in this redistricting referendum, despite it being only a few months removed from Democrats winning by massive margins, is, of course, the unfavorability and immediate decline in approval rating ever since Abigail Spanberger got into office and tried to raise a bunch of taxes and governed extremely far left, arguably more far left than Mamdani. As you can see, new polls are now currently showing in only month 3 an approval rating for Spanberger of 47%, trailing behind her Republican predecessor Glenn Youngkin, who, let's remember, was a Republican governing in a blue state. At this point in his term, he was, of course, at 54%. Likewise, we see her getting booed in public at baseball games and being forced to answer for all of this stuff. So just keep in mind that this is happening, and there's sort of maybe grounded reason to say Democrats already, because they don't know how to govern and their actual policies when they're not just screaming about Trump are actually extremely unpopular, that maybe some momentum could be on Republican side here, even going into 2026.
Well, Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger campaigned and won as a moderate Democrat, but just 3 months after a decisive victory, her approval rating reflects a deep divide. New polls show a favorability of 47%, so that's way below her Republican predecessor, Glenn Youngkin. At this time of his term, he rated at 54%.
Numbers a little unfavorable, and then your predecessor Glenn was making a podcast run earlier this week to taking a couple jabs at you. I guess overall, on your numbers, what do you attribute that to, and then what would you say back to Glenn?
I would say, if everybody hated me, why is everybody putting my face on their mailers for the referendum?
Like absolute nails on a chalkboard. Frankly, I wonder how many of her voters are now just hearing her voice for the first time and thinking to themselves, wow, I really don't like this woman. This person is extremely off-putting. Yeah, I know, we tried to tell you that, but nonetheless, this is something that is currently working to our advantage. Not only is she personally unlikable, but she is going on this very radical left turn that maybe people are getting the perception they didn't vote for, and that's certainly working to our favor. At the same time, I have to just be honest, this is the most frustrating aspect to me of democracy or the republic, whatever you really want to call it, but it's this issue where voters will vote for something and then get mad when they get it, right? And this is not just about Democrats. It's also about Republicans. I mean, look at Trump. So people vote for mass deportations. ICE starts deporting people and they say, wait, I don't know if I wanted it like that. Maybe they're going too far. In fact, I know so many right-leaning people, even who vote for Trump, support the Republicans, whatever, but they're like, I don't know if I fully agree with the ICE stuff. You agreed with it in 2024 when Biden was going crazy on the border. What, do we all just have amnesia now? We suddenly just forget all that? We suddenly no longer understand the need to remove illegal aliens from the country? But this is a very real thing that happens in politics. And frankly, it honestly just goes to show why quote unquote democracy is actually in many ways a flawed system. I'm not talking about our audience, obviously, because I feel like our community, we're tapped in. We generally understand the mission. We stick to the mission. We know what team we're on. When we actually get a policy that we ask for, we celebrate it, don't condemn it. But we also have to be honest. This is a huge part of the American electorate who will say they want something, and then when it actually gets implemented and the reality sets in, oh, this is what it actually looks like, they sit there and say, oh, no, we don't want that, because you can't sustain a country that way, right? You get elected on doing something, you implement that, you have this vision for the country, and then the people say, oh, no, we don't want that vision, we want the other vision, we vote for the other party. The other party gets elected, does their thing, people don't like it, then they just flip-flop. You can't get anything done this way, Let me just say, there is a reason why democracies or republics are not typical to human history, right? Why most countries historically have not done this. One could argue this is even a built-in advantage that the dictatorships have, is that in general, people are stupid. They don't know what they want. And in order to maintain a republic or any democratic system, you have to have a population of people that generally has the agency to, think long-term about these things and actually sit there and say, okay, this is what we want. This is the direction we choose. We understand the reality of this. But of course, that's just not how it works nowadays. And I mean, people are... I think, first of all, there's too much involvement in politics, which is to say a huge subset of the population that historically back in the day didn't care about elections now cares. And you can see the IQ levels kind of lacking there. We, of course, have massive hordes of third world migration of people who don't know what the heck is going on. They don't even know how to comprehend a political system that actually involves choice. And, you put that all together and it's just this disaster right here, right? It really does. I mean, again, I'll use it to our advantage because that's the game. That's what we have to do. But it really does frustrate me that people will vote for the libtards by like 10, 15 points. They get the libtards. The libtards are doing everything that we knew they were going to do, even if they said they were going to be moderate. Dude, you've watched this political party for the last 10 years. Has anything been moderate about them? No. There's a reason why you voted for Trump in 2024. Oh, but maybe this time they'll be different. You don't deserve the right to vote if you're that dumb. But of course, you do have the right to vote. And that is, of course, the problem with our country. And then people ask me, why do you defend Trump all the time? This administration's been a disaster. You have that very large clique growing in right-wing media. And it's because of people like this and, frankly, people like you, right, who sit here and we're watching the most effective right-wing administration of most of our lifetimes. Believe it or not, when you check the record, he's doing most of what he said he was going to do, a way better success rate at that, by the way, fulfilling actual campaign promises than most presidents ever. Okay, people seem to forget what a normal president looks like. That includes the first Trump administration. And by the way, for it, because of it, he's coming under a lot of fire. There's a lot of intense pushback. Why? Because he's actually doing things. And contrary to popular myth, you do not get rewarded for doing things in politics. You get punished with bad press and public backlash. There's a reason why the most popular politicians, and check the approval ratings, are literally the do-nothing politicians, because they just sit there, don't do anything to piss people off, right? All they do is shake hands and kiss babies, and then re-election. And the fact that Trump is not doing that, he's actually governing for legacy. He's actually governing to make us happy and fulfill to his base what he promised to get done. Is it difficult? Yes. Is there a lot of pushback? Are there woke judges? Are there terrorist Democrats? Are there rhino Republicans? Yes, absolutely. We knew since 2016 and probably before these things all existed. But that's also at the same time why, when we face that pushback, we need to keep pushing ahead and encourage people to push ahead, right? Not jump ship like half of right-wing media has done now and all this, stupid nonsense. Oh, we have the best opportunity in our lifetimes. We're getting the best in terms of policy, the best political administration of our lifetimes. And we're going to say, it's not good enough, or no, this is not what I voted for, or, really, let's translate that. We're cowards and we're scared of left-wing pushback and the crackdown that might come if we lose 2028. So let's all say now we're not on the Trump train, right? Let's try to be devoid of those consequences. And then that's how you get crap like this right here. That's how you get a country who goes Democrat, Republican. They can't decide what they want because people without the IQ or acumen to process politics on any level and shouldn't be voting and shouldn't be involved in this stuff, they are involved in this stuff. And it's a very sad situation. But anyways, that's just my little rant. That said, make sure you go push back against the terrorist Looney Tunes Democrats on Tuesday if you live in Virginia. With that said, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.